Welcome, fellow galactic explorers, to From a Certain Point Askew, the only Star Wars podcast that boldly ventures where no one else dares to tread. We're the folks who once managed to pull off the unthinkable, selling the Bad Batch cunningly disguised brood of banthas as genetically engineered black market blurgs, all while riding bareback during the thrilling festivities of Bunta's Eve, and live to tell the tale. Who might these daring men be, you ask? Well, I am Jason the Angry Ginger Jedi Guy. I'm inside of Wookiee Poo Studios. On the screen, making me not alone, is Darth Mathias. Hello, good sir.
You know, your dedication to writing this past week has really bled into your intros as well, because you're
I feel
very
like I got
verbose.
stabbed in the ass with something, because like that's all I'm doing lately is writing. Couldn't tell you if it's any good, but I'm doing a lot of it. So.
I feel like in about a month you're gonna go, hey, by the way, I already wrote 2 parts of a 3-part trilogy of novels for Star Wars.
Yeah.
So tell me what you
get
think.
It out of my head. Yeah, fuck you, 60%.
Good to see you, Jay. I speaking of that, I did want to give a reminder to everybody. This episode, well, hopefully, will be dropping Friday, and if it does, then just to remind you, on the 7th is Star Wars Podcast Day, which we participated in last year. We did like a little Q&A last year. This year, we're, as we've mentioned on the show recently, we're doing a collection of stories, mostly written by you, some written by our listeners, and narrated in audio book
half and
format.
half, I think.
Yeah, about half and half. So I think we got 7 total, which is great. So that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be kind of a special episode. It'll be very different than most of our episodes because it's just going to really be these stories. We even have a narrator who takes you through each story to story. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's correct.
So I hope you tune in for that February 7th. And then, after that will be the Bad Batch preview, and we're fucking off to the races.
I want to see pictures of our listeners sitting down with some spotchka in their chair and like just push and play, relaxing, and being swept away to a galaxy far, far away.
Dry January is over, folks. Let's get that spotchka out, okay?
That's right.
If you'd like to find our show from certainpointaskew.com, we're on Twitter at FACPA Pod, and you can email us facpapod@gmail.com.
On the show today, we've got a few things to get through here. We've got a question of the week. Tech, where you at? And then we're going to go into FACPA Breakdown, the Death Star Trench Run, Podracing, and George Lucas's Need for Speed with our boy Ro from the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast. And then 2 mail bags, two emails in the mail bag we'll get to. So quick episode.
Yeah, quick episode. So question of the week, I put out there, I do have a bit of an obsession with tech. I put out there, somehow Tech survived. What's his next move? Wrong answers only. So we got about a little handful of answers here. Max Rebo Experience says, find a way to Chandrila. I never know if I'm saying it right. You always say Chandrila, I think. I think maybe I'll just go with that. Chandrila. And then change his name to Perrin and hook up with a hot senator.
People are really trying to get to me.
Pushing buttons.
It's not happening. It's not happening. I know who she has eyes for. It's me.
At least in your mind. And he, Max Rebo, loves to tweet. I mean, I'm even getting, it's called like subtweeting, right? When he says shit about tech, not directly to me. And I see it, and I'm like, I'm not going to take that bait because you're just doing it to fuck with me. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, he's trying to lure you in.
Speaking of Ro from the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast, he said, based on those headphones and the antenna, I think he's queuing up the latest FACPA episode. There you go. Thanks, Ro.
I think that's probably the best answer right there.
He's got a lot of episodes to go back through.
Yeah, well, that's during his recovery. I mean, that fall had to hurt. So no matter what he hit, banged, boomed on, he's going to be laying in bed for a little bit. So he's got 134 episodes to go through.
Tech, I hope you take the 134 episode challenge.
Yeah.
Max Rebo's back. He says he'll obviously have amnesia, so he forgets about all his brothers, so he gets a job as a mechanic. After a while, he gets a number of gigs of increasing importance, around 5... I see it says around 0.5 BBY. I guess that's what he means. 0.5 BBY. He'll get a job working for a royal family on the safest planet in the galaxy, Alderaan. Oh!
Man, that's a twist.
I hate you, Max Rebo.
By then, he's off his crutches. He's doing good. Life is great. Taking in the air every morning, maybe some cold plunges. Yeah. And then boom.
And then it's over. And then he looks up just as the beam starts coming down. He's like, shit. Yeah. Why did I pick this place? Finally, rural farm boy. Low on rations in his pack, he took a V-Wing fighter and headed off for Sorgan. Think Chapter 4 Mando, the common house. Remember that place? Would you travelers like some spotchka? Or whatever she says.
Yes.
For a bite and sipping spotchka. There, he says, there's the map. It ain't a stretch. No, I put the map in there and then I circled the two. They are relatively close.
They are.
Doesn't it always strike you, or maybe not always, but if you ever look at this map, it's always interesting to me how close some of these places are. Like Mustafar and Dagobah are pretty fucking close together.
Yeah, they're neighbors.
Yeah.
That's pretty. I see Scarif way up on the top of there. There's Ryloth,
right.
Genosis. Yeah, they're all right there. Mid-rim, outer rim area.
A lot of stuff is very close.
Crate. Yeah.
Yeah, Crate's
Naboo.
there.
Man.
It's all together. Anyway, maps, timelines, we struggle with it all, but we appreciate those who send us guides.
Yes. Thank you for the visual.
Yeah. You know he's got that shit memorized.
I know.
Yeah, real farm boy. All right. So that's it for Question of the Week. Next is our segment with Ro from the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast. We're going to get into kind of he has this theory. We as we talk about on during the episode, or during the segment, I should say, we're pretty sure nobody else has this theory, or at least he came up with it on his own.
Right.
And it was just the parallels between the trench run from the Death Star and A New Hope and pod racing, and then how it ties back to George Lucas personally. We're going to get into that in our FACPA breakdown. I apologize on my audio. I'm so stupid. I didn't think to adjust the settings of StreamYard, which we were using to record. So I was worried I couldn't record just myself. So it's the StreamYard feed for me. But for you and Ro, it's your own board. So it's your guys' audio sounds great.
Sound good.
Yeah, you sound good. Mine sounds like 75% good. So without further ado, here is our conversation with Ro. With us today, again, is Ro from the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast. I'd like to have Ro come on and do some topics with us as much as possible. And today we have a breakdown segment that we're going to get into here in a second. But Ro, say hello to everybody.
Hello to everybody. What's happening, Matt and Jay? It's a pleasure to be here. It's always fun when I hang out with you guys.
Hey.
Hey, why don't you let everybody know how to find your show?
Absolutely. Turn over to your smart speaker and ask her to play the latest Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. We can be found wherever you download your other favorite podcasts. If you ain't listening to the Scarif podcast, where you at?
Wow.
I don't know.
I'm going to leave this show and go over there. That's impressive.
Almost sounded in the vein of like, what's up? It was kind of that. So yeah, we like to do these segments where we do kind of a breakdown of a scene or a couple scenes or whatever, get into the weeds a little bit on the meanings behind them, and just some of the bits that we see. It's always kind of fun to do. And so one that we were talking to Ro about was, and you can set this up, Ro, but essentially it's looking at some parallels between the trench run on the Death Star in A New Hope and the pod racing scenes we get in Phantom Menace.
Absolutely. You know, as Star Wars fans, we always see that phrase. It's poetry. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Right.
And sometimes that phrase annoys me because, like, sometimes I'm looking at whatever post it is. I'm like, it's not poetry. It's just the same shot. It's a medium shot, dude. What the hell? But sometimes, you know, George Lucas obviously, is known for his younger days for speed. He directed American Graffiti. He is into racing. When he was a teenager, he was doing some racing up in Northern California in Modesto, and he wrapped his he wrapped his Fiat around a tree. Almost didn't have him for a time there, but it was a close call, an accident that speed was one of the factors that George Lucas is really into. You know, we get a lot of speed in his movies, particularly Star Wars. Obviously, you have the space battles, which are phenomenal, and as we watch them and absorb them as youngins, very exciting space battles between the X-Wings and the TIE fighters, the good guys and the bad guys. But the final sequence where the X-Wings finally go down that Death Star trench is obviously one of cinema's most iconic sequences.
You had me at going down.
Yeah, so it's exciting, and it's exciting for many reasons. And I think from a cinematic standpoint, George really definitely knew what he was doing there, because the pacing of that scene, it just keeps building and building and building. Obviously, you have a nice a couple of shots of the X-Wings going down the trench. And it's funny because not a lot of people notice this, but there's no music during the first half of that trench scene. It's all sound effects. It's all dialogue. The audience is really paying attention, and the stakes are high. There is one point, I think, when one of the X-Wing pilots crashes on the surface of the Death Star, where it seems like all hope is lost. The Empire is about to win. The music kicks in such a way that is it adds so much hope and even more excitement to that scene. I would challenge your listeners to go back and take a look at the entire sequence from beginning to end up until the destruction. But there's a certain rhyme or reason to the structuring of that scene. Cut back, obviously, to 1999 when we get some more speed in the form of pod racers for the Phantom Menace. That sequence is structured almost identical to the X-Wing run on the Death Star. You have a sequence where there's a lot of speed happening, the sound effects of the speeder bikes, the dialogue between the characters, and little Anakin is falling behind. Sebulba is kind of cheating, but there is a point in time where the tides turn for little Anakin, and you get that music that kicks in that gives you as the audience some hope, and it turns up to a level 10 on the excitement meter. And again, like I said, it's structured I want to say identical to the Death Star trench, and I think it's one of the more I guess popular things for me to be able to witness, because by trade I'm an editor. I edit news and put all this stuff together. I love editing the podcast, obviously, but these are some of the things, some of the little details of Star Wars that I notice from a behind the scenes aspect. And I love when it actually is like poetry and it does rhyme.
It's a lot of things. One, I didn't think until you were talking about the fact that the music doesn't kick in. It's the Red Leader gets wiped out after he makes his run and it packs on the surface. That's when the music kicks in. I didn't even think about that before.
Yeah.
Now in the pod racing, I mean, obviously he's got several major obstacles. This thing doesn't even start at first. And then he's got the issue where his part of his ship comes loose and all that. When does the music kick in there?
I think it's right before that sequence. I think there's something that comes loose on the pod racer. Mm-hmm. And he loses power in one of the engines.
It's called the Canuter valve.
The Canuter valve. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And he fixes it when one power, the power from one side goes to the other side. And then when he throttles forward and he goes, that's when I think that's when the music starts.
I didn't realize that. I didn't get attention to that piece of it. Because you mentioned the musical cues when you threw this on the dock, and I was thinking, okay, but I wasn't quite sure what you meant. But I didn't realize that, it really does kick in at that same point.
It does kick in. It kicks in, and it's really subliminal. I mean, obviously you're paying attention to both sequences, and there's a lot happening. The speed of the frame, the characters, the dialogue back and forth. I mean, there are some real stakes at play here. And, just when you think that you can't get any more, heightened the excitement, I mean, the music kicks in, John Williams adds his voice to these sequences, and off we go to the races. Really,
There's a part of me that's like, John Williams added his voice? That's all I want to hear. It's just him doing that. Yeah.
Well, you also mentioned Sebulba cheats. What do you mean by that? There's no rules.
Right. There's no rules. Pod racing.
You want. And I guess that means that Sebulba is the Darth Vader of the pod race. I guess I didn't think about it that way, because there are definitely a lot of parallels. I mean, even just getting into like the Beggar's Canyon sequence, that is very much like the French Run. It is very tight quarters, jockeying for position and all that stuff. So I can see all the parallels there.
Is this a row theory, or is this something else that's out there? Because I've actually never heard this, but thinking about it, it makes sense, especially like when they're going to go into it. Like, he's already done this once before. Like, it's easier because the first time when he was like, he kept having to like show him war footage, and he was like, and he cut like different scenes of, historical footage together to make that sort of trench run fight, right? And then now instead of doing that again, he's just like, go watch the trench run and make it cool for pod racers.
What was the question?
He's asking,
was this your theory?
Was this your theory? Because he was saying, you know, and one of the things he noticed is that Lucas had that first movie that he did. The second time around, it seemed like it was a little more polished.
Oh yeah, it's definitely more
Thank you,
polished.
Matt.
I think, you know, I think from a directorial standpoint, I think George Lucas obviously knew what he wanted by cutting in that World War II footage. But I think, you know, there's an aspect of his directing that really lends itself to taking the story and the excitement, you know, step by step. And I think what makes the trench run so exciting is that you know, you're already up there, and by the time the music kicks in on that final lap, you know, and you treat it like like an Indy 500 race, where that last lap is really, you know, this is make it or break it. And you know, bringing in that music cue in both sequences is something that definitely lends itself to heightening or bringing that sense of excitement, you know, higher.
Well, and there's a lot of other parallels. I mean, you've got in the pod racing, you've got, you know, Padme, Qui-Gon, and Shmi in that raised tower monitoring the race, just like Leia and General Dodonna and C-3PO are in headquarters on Yavin watching all that unfold, or kind of monitoring how that all unfolds.
And I think it would be different if they were different directors, but knowing that obviously it's a little bit of George's style to be able to kind of borrow themes from his own work. You know, you almost had that in American Graffiti, that last fight between the last race between Falfa and John.
First name Al.
Right. What's the last name? Milner. John Milner's character. So yeah, I mean, I think it's something that George grew up loving. You know, the faster and more intense, and you know, he definitely employed it masterfully in his films.
Yeah, I was aware of the history to a degree of his racing history, and that he had that accident, and I forgot about the fact the accident, if his seatbelt doesn't break, he dies. Like, he gets thrown from the vehicle, or else he would have smashed into the tree and lost his head. I didn't also realize. Well, a couple of things. One is you really see the Anakin in him. He's like Mr. Gadgety guy, like constantly like working on stuff and
he's a tinkerer.
Yeah, very much a tinkerer. And I also, the whole thing about like how his father wanted him to take over the family business, very much like you know, how almost to a degree like Luke being like, no, Uncle Owen, I don't want to do the goddamn moisture farms. I want to go off and fight.
Right.
And he kissed his sister.
Yeah, and the sister kissing. Yeah, he totally made out with the sister bunch before he realized what was going on. You know, he was young.
That was a home video, but it was still one of his movies.
Oh, we're getting sued.
Chris Rock and Jay and Silent Bob. George Lucas gonna sue the shit out of him.
Well, then also there's other ties. I think I read that Anakin's pod racer, isn't it like the frame of like a 1960s car that they used to make that pod racer? I believe that's part of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can take a look at some of the vehicles in the pod race, and maybe some vehicles that were used in American Graffiti, and make some nice little connections.
Like hot rods, big engines, like all that stuff is there. Yeah,
sure.
And even the pre-race stuff is a lot of parallels, you know, like the calm before the storm when they're on Yavin getting ready to fly, and all these people are getting their ships ready and everything. Kind of similar to the feel when all those pod racers are getting ready. That whole sequence, that sequence lasts, you know, quite a while. We did a breakdown of the full pod race with Thorian Historian. I mean, the number of characters they introduce you to just in that little sequence to give you a taste of all the people he's racing against. They take their time with it, and that is something that I think you see from Lucas, is he does take his time with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and to your question earlier, Jay. I'm not going to speak for Roe, but I think this is his theory, because I looked up. I was like, is there like an article out there that talks about like parallels between these two? I couldn't really find anything. So,
okay,
I'll claim it.
This might be all you, Roe. I mean, yeah, maybe somebody else has thought of it, but nothing published that I saw.
Yeah, and I'm surprised too, really, because like I said, you know, my professional trade is I'm an editor. and I do see like the rhyme and reason for sometimes the rhythm of editing, the functionality of, cutting to a wide shot before a close up, all those little things that maybe a normal audience member, watching a movie don't, there's certain things in editing that you employ to elicit some sort of feeling or connection to what it is that you're, trying to communicate in film. To me, it's kind of exciting and kind of a very nerdy, fashion. And it's something that I've noticed. I always notice when I watch, the Phantom Menace, and then I go back and I kind of, in my mind, rewatch the Death Star trench, and it's all there. It's all in there.
Do you, when you're editing stuff for your job, do you ever like turn in something and then come back later and be like, wait, I did another version of it. It's even better. I added a bunch of shit in the background. It's fantastic. Like all of a sudden it's some like winter series because you're in Chicago, and all of a sudden you've like, put an ad in the background.
There's a Wampa walking around Michigan Avenue here. Use this version.
No, Ro. That's for you. That one's for you. We're going to use your first cut.
It just cuts to Ro running down a hallway and into a room filled with people. Then he turns around and runs away.
He's got a whole like shelf with special edition Ro videos at work.
Yeah,
exactly.
Please release those on a YouTube channel. Anything else, Jay, from you on that?
No, I find that to be interesting. I never really looked at it or thought about it that way, but seeing it in my head, I think you're right. There's a lot of comparison there.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna call it the Ro theory. That's how we'll market this thing.
Yep.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll take it.
But thank you for bringing that, Ro, and we will have you on again when you do more FACPA breakdowns. We do have the Bad Batch stuff coming up, which is going to take up a lot of our time. But anytime there's these gaps in active content, it's a great time to do these breakdowns. It's so much fun to do it. It really lets you get in the weeds more and dive into this stuff. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for bringing that. Real quick, remind everybody again, how do they find you on Twitter and all that?
Yeah, Scarif Podcast. Look for our show wherever you find your other favorite podcasts. We are part of the Red 5 Network. Just look for Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast.
All right, thanks. We'll have you on soon.
Do it.
Excellent. Do it.
All right, thanks, Ro. And as a note, I should have mentioned this. There's an episode coming up of the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast that we will be on. Discussing the concept of what if in Star Wars, and if that's a good idea, bad idea, what they might do with it, some wacky, wild ideas that Jay came up with. So definitely go
read
check.
From the list. I'll give a shout out to a couple on the list.
Give a tease. There you go.
Yeah, so we have a couple of them that we discussed. Was Yoda struggled with testicular cancer in an 8-part Disney Plus series, only to discover during recovery he'd also had colon cancer.
So sad.
That's something we'll kind of delve into possibly on the next episode, our written stories.
Have you ever heard of the tragedy of Yoda's balls?
Yeah. What do you think those things look like?
Oh God.
Like, I mean, at the top of his head, just.
I mean, think about how wrinkled up a scrotum looks in general. Now think of Yoda's.
Yeah. Green and patchy. Palpatine had a sister. What if? What if Anakin only turned to the dark side out of fear of having to explain to the council that he wasn't having sex with Padme because he was only practicing soaking?
That's the best one.
That one got you, yeah.
I love that.
Chopper. What if Chopper uploaded his consciousness into a separatist assassin droid? Okay. Now that one is just serial killer murder, is how I see that episode.
Oh, that would be great. I mean, that's very much an R rating, and it is just extreme violence.
Yeah, I want to see like a Visions episode like that. Just go crazy with it. What if General Grievous moonlighted as an underworld dominatrix? I mean, there really is a trend that I set with these things.
Circle jerk.
I might need therapy.
You just put him in the middle. He can work everybody.
Yeah. What if Luke and Leia couldn't deny their chemistry after the first steamy kiss and wanted to keep the Skywalker Jedi pure, so Kylo was secretly Luke's and not Han's?
Well, who is it who said, somebody responded to Rose throwing out the what if thing, and somebody said, what if carbonite makes men sterile? And I was like, there you go.
Oh,
Han couldn't bear children.
Uh-huh. So Luke had to go in there.
Yeah.
It was for the greater good.
He's the donor.
Two more. What if Lando switched out his capes for ascots?
Mm-hmm.
And what if Ahsoka became Darth Vader's secret apprentice, and together they killed Palpatine?
That's intriguing.
There's a twist.
I
That's
think
the
they'd
story.
work him over. As much as Palpatine, as powerful as he was, those two together, look out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen to that. Check that out. I don't know what episode it's coming out because he sometimes records stuff well in advance. So I'm sure it'll be out the next couple weeks. So go look for that. All right. So the Maul Bag. We technically didn't have any emails this week, but I converted a couple tweets because they were responses to a post I made about our last episode and all the Rey movie speculation. And so they I guess the way I put the post out there kind of sounded like a question of the week. So they addressed it. So I wanted to throw those in there. So we'll call these emails.
All right.
Email number 1, Max Rebo experience.
Wow.
So this was like kind of the what's the storyline going to be of Rey? Who are the villains, etc. All Star Wars is ultimately a David versus Goliath story. Rey and perhaps a small band of plucky but endearing students will face off against a much larger and well-organized force of some sort. It's 15 years after the First Order, so it's long enough for some warlord to coalesce into an appropriately threatening force. My hope is it's Grogu as the Mandalore of Mandalore, still pissed at Luke. He comes after his successor. But Disney isn't that brave. It'll be space Nazis led by a space Nixon. It's always space Nazis.
I like that we talked about it before, like with the themes of Star Wars and the darkness and the redemption. It would be kind of cool to see Grogu go that way. But I don't see him like in the film as like the main bad guy. It's not threatening, right?
No, he's shown some signs, much like Ezra did, that they get pulled a little bit. They're kind of interested in using that dark force to kind of as a means to an end, and so you could see that happening. I could never see him go full bore dark side, and not to mention it'd be a marketing disaster if they did that because everybody'd be like, "Fuck, why'd you do that to Grogu?" No
shit. Yeah, not cute little Grogu.
No, that would be quite a twist. But yeah, I think you're right. I think he just has a little bit of it in there below the surface.
And really, like, if it was Grogu, you'd have to go more like Napoleon than Nazis, right? Short man syndrome.
True, exactly. He's a tiny little guy, but a genius, a strategic genius. All right, email number 2 is from Ash Rendar. A new race of aliens make their way to the galaxy, causing chaos and havoc, and the only way to communicate with them is by going back in time and rescuing a Purgle. Star Wars: The Journey Home, an original story. We touched on this in our last episode, and the more I think about it, the more I could see this happening in that. I think there's actually an EU story of some sort. Maybe it's in the comics or something. I don't even know. Where this species comes from another galaxy and starts attacking worlds.
It's the species that they fight against Thrawn's race of people, right?
I think you're right. So, I mean, that's certainly an option. That's certainly something we could see happen because. Will they go with a brand new, kind of known villain that we've never seen before? Some group that we've never seen before. It would be kind of cool to see that. I just don't know. I don't know if they'll go that far or not.
What's a Star Wars movie without stormtroopers, though? Like, what's that going to look like 15 years in the future? Like, who's trying to take over? Because there's always a stormtrooper. That's like one of the go-to bad guys, right?
Yeah, there isn't a movie that we've seen without stormtroopers, is there?
Yeah,
it's a good point. Fucking Anthony Daniels is going to be in that movie, isn't he?
C-3PO?
Yeah.
Of course he will be.
Yeah, because he's probably standing outside Pinewood. He's like camped out outside Pinewood Studios right now. I'm available.
He just lives like in Pinewood Studios somewhere. Just uses like the community bathroom.
Exactly. He's got a little closet. Nobody knows he's there. Catch him in the showers every now and then.
I've been here for 40 years. No one knows.
He's always on these things. Jesus. Anyway, that's fun. Oh, by the way, just a shout out to Ash. She is starting a new YouTube channel called Jedi Nightly News Weekly.
Oh, nice.
And so I'm not sure when that kicks off. I know she set the channel up, but I'm not sure if she has gotten anything further from there. But and as a side note too, Jay keeps threatening me because he's got you signed up for the lifetime StreamYard membership? Is that what you got?
Basically, it's yearly, but I never know when it's going to clear, so I need to go in there and just cancel it because I haven't used it in 2 years. But it ran through. It's like a month or so ago that it hit again. I think it was $300. I don't remember.
Jesus, really? It's that expensive?
Yeah, $299. I think it was $199. I don't remember. It was enough to be like, fuck.
Yeah, exactly. I've had a couple of those where it's the annual and you forget about the auto renewal. You're like, shit, too late. So we joked about maybe doing some video in the future for our show.
Yeah.
I don't know if people would be interested in that or not. Maybe we do it more of a special occasion thing, not every week, but
Maybe.
something fun to do. It'd be fun to do a live stream.
I agree.
Have
Maybe
people
that's what
on
we
and
use it for.
shoot the shit with us. That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. When we do like crossovers and stuff, we'll do the video version of it.
That would be fun.
So look for that. Until then, thank you for listening. Until next time,
Laugh it up, fuzzballs.
we have spoken.